大概应该也有吧。OK。头一次看到是上涨的呀。去机场的轻轨。
如果从哪儿飞的话，可以坐火车过来，然后坐这个走过来。
对，
挺方便的。
对。但关键就是，所有真的坐飞机的时候，咱肯定是包太大了，在这儿出舱直接火车就到曼城机场。那个麦当劳是咱们入住那个。
我知道麦当劳的收费就是那个
啊，这是不收费，
不是要密码。
那我不知道。走钢丝吗？这8月是在爱丁堡的艺术节，所以它各种街头活动。啊。
糖果店。
是吗？ 音乐节。
然后我们走过来，然后看免费的。
这里。
但是下车拿个告示，夏天有夜抢，这个
夜间路线。24小时的，没有24小时，等到午夜吧。
会有夜班的。
好像是对你这个车挺有意思。我不看你尴尬的不是我。
对。这儿有景点吗？这儿有景点吗？我觉得这离咱酒店近。
这儿不离咱酒店。咱们酒店还在那头，咱酒店在城堡的那头。他应该在外头转一大圈，他回城堡的路啊，应该有一个地方得在那。
那行。
咱现在在这儿，他这个应该在这头转再转回来，他最后是要上城堡的。
离家近的。
来，咱喊早餐啊。
我知道，你中午饭。
Quite a bit shut up along here.
都是小马开的。
Yeah, tomorrow's Christmas Street.
Do you want to sit right side or you sit freeze?
I got
有站牌，但它站牌长得就跟这似的，就这么一个站牌，看咱那个赛的摄影倒数第二个那个，他应该走的就是巴士站。
good lunch on Wednesday. Things we don't know about.
I saw circle blind. I saw circle blind.
Okay.
Daddy, it is circle blind.
我觉得知道这事儿太大了。
我给我小点儿。
Ironically, James Usher did not drink alcohol.
Daddy, is it circle blind? Daddy, is it circle blind?
Yeah.
Alistair Sim, a
Is it
well-known
that?
British character actor. He started life as a teacher of elocution before becoming an actor.
Is it this one?
Yes. Copeland.
嗯，对。
我看见了。
Herriot was based on an Edinburgh school with a similar name, which was housed in what is now part of Edinburgh University Locke Hall's
我们左边的
residence.
那个方向。还有转是吧？他现在在往左转，咱就在那条上走。
Tell Jerry to Oh.
这离咱最近站是这边，是吧？
This street has the name of Bread Street because some sources say the Society of Bakers had their premises situated in this area. The large building, which is now a hotel, was built in 1892 for Edinburgh's
Look, I'm doing
cooperative society,
for
St Cuthbert's,
so
as their
people
main
can hear
sponsor.
this one now for earphones.
St Cuthbert's expanded to become one of the largest societies in the British cooperative movement, employing some 3,000 people at its peak, and owning an equally large acreage of farmland. It amalgamated with the DL Society in the west of Scotland in 1981 to form a new company called Scotmid.
箱子好大。
对，从这个门口那咱走应该不到10分钟。反正这是另一个公司的路线。
We are now approaching the Grass Market, a lively part of the old town. This is a great place to leave the bus, have a meal or a drink and soak up the atmosphere. As you can see, the north side of this area has preserved more of its antique features than the south. Some of the pubs and buildings are remnants of the old, tall, irregular tenements arranged in line in the lee of the great ridge of the Castle Rock. As long ago as 1477, it was decided that a weekly market should be held here for wood and timber, while on Fridays, old graith and gear were to be sold. This old Scottish phrase means old furniture or apparatus for work and mechanical devices. The Grass Market was a place of public execution. This was a popular spectacle in both Scotland in general and Edinburgh in particular. The actual site of the scaffold is the circular raised area at the far end of the street. A pub with an interesting story relating to its proximity to the gallows is Maggie Dixon's. Maggie Dixon was a Mcewen fishwife, convicted in Edinburgh in 1728 for murdering her own baby immediately following its birth. He protested her innocence and was found guilty, though it is by no means certain that she had killed her child. She had not been married to the child's father, and at that time, those considered not active immoral were often judged harshly by society. Maggie was sentenced to death by hanging. From that time until the early Edwardian period, agriculture may be said to have centred its movements and interests here in the Grass Market. This was the chosen resort of agriculture. The cattle drover, the shepherd, the farmers, the butcher, and the horse dealer. This was a place of noise, a place of hustle and bustle, a place, in short, of commerce.
two for separate pounds. American orange. Father loved them.
跟那个是那个伦敦的那个大面包儿。
Yeah, Amber, yeah. All of them, especially roses. They both like roses. Yeah.
For Maggie Dixon, after whom the pub is named, the sentence of death was carried out here, at the public gallows. However, as her body was on the way to burial after the hanging, the coffin moved and Maggie stepped out, completely unscathed. Scots law prohibited a rehanging, so she was set free. From that time forth, she was known as Half-Hangit Maggie. In later life, she continued to deny the charges. She eventually had many children and died of old age. This is Candlemaker Row. The street was named after the most popular trade here at the time, candle making. Behind the wall lies Greyfriars Churchyard. The strong retaining wall and battlement were built in the early part of the 20th century, specifically for the sole purpose stated at the time to keep the dead from breaking bounds upon the living. In 1562, the city magistrates, under a charter of Mary Queen of Scots, converted what had been the garden of a Franciscan monastery into what is now Greyfriars Churchyard, to replace the churchyard at St Giles Church. The story of Greyfriars Bobby, whose statue is at the end of the railings, is one of canine fidelity to the grave and beyond. The dog's master, Jock Grey, was a local policeman who died when the dog was just 2 years old. Bobby followed the funeral procession into the graveyard, and for the next 14 years he returned every night to lie on his master's grave until he died in February 1872. Several books and films have been based on Bobby's life, most memorably by Walt Disney in the 1960s. This story of a faithful animal is an alluring and enduring story, and a dog can really be man's best friend. As we turn into Teviot Place, the D-shaped sandstone building is the Mcewen Hall, which is Edinburgh University's graduation hall. The building of this hall was financed by the Mcewen brewing family, who created a vast brewing empire in the 19th century. Eventually, they were the subject of a takeover bid from Heineken, and later sold to Wells and Youngs. The architect of both this building and the one beyond it, the world-renowned Edinburgh Medical School, was Sir Robert Rowand Anderson. He designed an unusual feature in the Mcewen Hall: twin staircases, both clockwise and anti-clockwise, winding round each other. This ensured a speedy evacuation of the venue, as when exiting, the odd-numbered rows went to one staircase, while the even numbers went to the other. On each side of this street is a fine building. The older of the two is the Elizabethan-style George Herriot School, founded in 1628. George Herriot was a goldsmith and a jeweller, thus by extension, moneylender to King James VI of Scotland and First of England. After his death, Herriot's estate was, as instructed in his last will and testament, used to found this school. Its first intake was in 1659. Herriot's was originally a boys-only school, but now takes both genders. Herriot's still offers bursary places for 100 children whose fathers have died, as stipulated in Herriot's original charter. On the other side of the road is the former Royal Infirmary of Edinburgh. Originally opened in 1870, it was built to Florence Nightingale's open ward principle. This meant beds were well spaced down either side of the ward, with the sister and her 2 senior nurses seated at the monitoring table at the entrance. A new hospital has been constructed on the southern fringes of the city, and the buildings here are being turned into a housing, bar, restaurant, shopping and hotel complex. The square Georgian sandstone building on the corner is the Chalmers Hospital. This is remarkable in that it was paid for by a plumber, George Chalmers, and the original charter required that 2 beds had to be kept free at all times for sick plumbers. This red sandstone building was once Edinburgh's main fire station. The central tower, which was originally capped, served to train recruits so that they could practice their ladder climbing technique. The building is now owned by Edinburgh University. In the area ahead, at the traffic lights, is the site of the southern entry to Tanner's Close, the operational base of a pair of Edinburgh's less salubrious characters, William Burke and William Hare. They had been employed as navigators, or navvies, to dig out the Union Canal, which was excavated to link Edinburgh and Falkirk. Burke and Hare were serial murderers, who decided to streamline the supply of corpses to the College of Surgeons and, in particular, to a certain Dr. Robert Knox. Such was the demand for fresh bodies to use in dissection classes that even otherwise respectable members of the medical community paid Burke and Hare for the corpses they provided, with no questions asked about where these corpses came from. Ahead of us, there is a remarkable view of the castle perched on its volcanic plug. From here, it is easy to see why the castle was such a formidable fortress. Why it was, to all intents and purposes, impregnable. The road we are on was constructed in the 1830s. Before that, Castle Rock descended without interruption down into the southern valley to the right. It is from there that an invading army would have had to begin its almost certainly doomed assault on the castle. further up the hill, a semicircular mast, the Half Moon Battery, comes into view. It is built on the ruins of a 14th century structure commissioned by David II that was known simply as David's Tower. Stretching in front of the castle is the Castle Esplanade, built in 1753 as a parade ground and now the performance space for the Edinburgh Military Tattoo. The tattoo first took place in 1950 and is performed over a 3-week period every August. It is a fabulous display featuring massed military bands, pipes and acts from all over the world. The tickets sell out months in advance. The next stop is the ideal place to alight to visit Edinburgh Castle, the Scottish Whisky Experience, the Camera Obscura, the Tartan Weaving Centre, the real Mary King's Close, and, if it is open, Gladstone's Land, as well as the Free Writers Museum and St Giles High Church. May we take this opportunity to remind you that if you are going to the castle, you can obtain fast entry tickets from our driver and avoid the queues. Our tickets are exactly the same price, but they are better as they are fast track. Please remember, when you wish to reboard the bus, return to this stop and indicate to the driver you wish the bus to stop by putting your hand out. If you fail to signal to the driver, he will simply pass you by. Remember, your ticket is valid for 24 hours from time and date of purchase. You can hop on and off the bus all day. Once again, this is the stop for Edinburgh Castle, Scottish Whisky Experience, Camera Obscura, Tartan Weaving Centre, Real Mary King's Close, Gladstone's Land, Writers Museum and St Giles. The building with a gilt copper hop fixed to the wall is Gladstone's Land. In this instance, land is a Scottish term meaning a tenement owned by one person, in this case, the said Mr Gladstone. This building dates from the first half of the 16th century, with windows half glazed and half shuttered. Mr Gladstone was a wealthy merchant who had purchased and refurbished the property in the early 17th century, some 60 years after its construction. He was an ancestor of the Victorian-era Prime Minister William Ewart Gladstone. In this area are several interesting closes. Close being an old Edinburgh word for alleyways that lead off Main Street. Lady Stairs Close is where you will find Lady Stairs House, which is home to the Writers' Museum. Originally built for some grey oak in 1622, the house takes its name from Countess Dowager of Stave, occupied it in the first half of the 18th century. Also contains the backers inscribed stones to the great names of Scottish
Left and right again.
24 hours, yes. Right on.
Another passageway of interest is the named after
Julia says,
Stitches title.
okay.
Cabinet
Let's try this in here.
Edinburgh City Council maintained a secret life as a burglar. We know really how we defunct gallery.
Okay, why don't you get on the other side to the top?
Case, Dr. Jekyll.
Okay. Okay, I'll just sit down for a minute. Boy, this was a busy stop. Yeah, probably. Souvenirs, earbuds, earbuds. Oh, can't plug them in. I don't know how to plug them in. Oh, maybe it's right here. Right? I tried. Yes.
Próxima parada é o barco.
Saw the red.
É o barco? Não, não a próxima parada, mas pra gente.
Got it. Plus, you got all you're way ahead of me. Very good.
Ok. Ah, então. Nossa, precisava vir nessa livraria, amiga. Devia ser chuva que nem é na frente. Ah, recebi lá. Então, a rua é uma
Wow. This is great.
This stop is for the National Museum of Scotland. The section housed in the more modern building tells the story of Scotland from prehistory to the present. The 19th century section, with its wonderful galleried interior, contains a myriad of exhibits which illustrate and explore scientific, social and natural history, together with design and technology. Many of the displays are interactive. Entry to the museum is free. The statue on the pavement outside the museum is of Sir William Chambers, a reforming 19th century Lord Provost of the city, after whom this thoroughfare is named. With his brother, the noted lexicographer Robert, he published the Chambers English Dictionary. The other statue is of William Henry Playfair, one of the leading architects in the building of the new town. This tour passes a number of his buildings.
Wayfair. Cheap. Look at this.
At the far end of the street, the large building is the quadrangle of Old College, part of the University of Edinburgh. It was originally designed by Robert Adam, but later completed by William Henry Playfair. The university was founded in the late 16th century and was the fourth in Scotland, following behind St Andrews, Glasgow and Aberdeen. It is the sixth oldest university in what is now Great Britain. In 2010, the college quadrangle was re-landscaped, and during the work, the remains of the original university library were discovered, together with scientific equipment believed to have been the property of Joseph Black, who became professor of chemistry here in 1766. An important figure in Edinburgh's 18th century intellectual life, Joseph Black discovered carbon dioxide gas.
South Bridge. Get the idea. But here's South Bridge, which is right in front of us. It's unusual.
And south for some same like it just depends on what side of the way you go. Almost like 1 o'clock, that's it.
This street is yet another bridge, South Bridge. Another street that is elevated, this one to span the Southern Valley. This is a substantial piece of engineering, running to over 1,000 feet in length, carried over 19 arches. When this was built at the end of the 18th century, it was constructed with 43 houses on each side of the bridge, and a series of warehouses underneath. At that period, this was a very high-class street, where were situated the Goldsmith Hall and the Merchant House. In addition, this was the original site of one of Edinburgh's noted universities, Herriot what? We have now rejoined the Royal Mile. This section is the High Street. The large building is a hotel, and although it looks old, as you can see from the foundation plaque, it was only completed in 1990. It was purposely made to look old. Its original owners had it set as pre-built sections from Scandinavia in kit form. Here in the High Street can be found the Museum of Childhood, and further down on the left is the Scottish Storytelling Centre, the world's first purpose-built modern centre for live storytelling. Here you can also find the historic house of John Knox. The next stop is for all of these places of interest.
John Knox. Ele é o...
Yeah.
This is the Museum of Childhood, which is a must visit. It was founded in 1955 and was the first of its kind in the world. It has a wonderful display of toys dating from the early Victorian era to those from within living memory, and the visitor will often feel like saying, I had one of those. Strangely, Patrick Murray, the founder of this museum, reportedly did not even like children. The Museum of Childhood is open most days of the week, and is many visitors' favourite free museum in Edinburgh.
No, this is the John Knox house.
Ah, olha só, tá bonitinha.
É o fundador do presbiteriano da Escócia.
Better than walking uphill.
This context is from the Anglo-Saxon, which means street, and is a term commonly used in English cities such as York. The canon part of the name refers to the Augustinian friars who would walk up this street from the abbey of their Hollywood to St Giles Church. Thus, is it literally the walk of the monks. The building coming to the right, the one with the balcony jutting out, is Moray House, built in 1618 by the Dowager Countess of Hugh.
There's so much noise going on, I didn't hear anybody, so
What?
there's all the noise going on, I don't hear anybody.
Yeah.
2:30, so we got till 2:30 tomorrow.
Next stop is for two
There's the
museums
balcony.
that have free admission, namely the Museum of Edinburgh and the People's Story. Both are very interesting. This stop is also for the Canongate Church. Canongate Church sits on the left, as the four coat of arms on the king's left, indicating that this is the church used by the sovereign when she is in residence at the Palace of Holyrood House. In 2011, this was the venue for a royal wedding. The marriage of Queen Elizabeth's granddaughter, Sarah Phillips, to Mike Tyndall, a former captain of the English rugby team. The Canongate, a separate town outside the city wall of Edinburgh. Adam Smith, known as the father of economics, is buried in this graveyard. next stop is for the Palace of Holyrood House, the Queen's Gallery, and the Parliament Complex. Please.
That's where the Queen would be, right? Yeah. Back there, yeah. Oh my goodness. That's where the
Olha que bonito aí, bem.
thought this quite a bit. The castle.
Abbey é monastério. Aí o James começou a visitar uma casa de hóspedes. Era o começo do...
It's going that way.
Aqui, ó.
Millennium Project. Dynamic Earth is an exciting and interactive experience that tells the history of the planet from its beginning onwards.
Planetário. Aqui, ó.
So you made a circle here. That's clever.
Estamos perto da
The next
casa.
stop is for Dynamic Earth.
Viu?
If you are visiting this attraction, please buy your ticket from the driver, as they can offer a discount not available at the door. As said before, this was a brewery, one of many breweries in what was for a time an industrial district that grew up around the palace. As Robert Louis Stevenson remarked in 1870, the palace has been left aside in the growth of Edinburgh. It stands grey and silent in a workman's quarter, among breweries and gasworks.
Olha esse residencial que moderno, é muito maluco, né? É bem moderno. Vale a pena vir aqui, viu? Vale a pena. Bem ciência.
Except for the steps, you said. Stop. Very good. There it is.
The next stop is for Dynamic Earth. If you are visiting this attraction, please buy your ticket from the driver, as they can offer a discount not available at the door. As said before, this was a brewery, one of many breweries in what was for a time an industrial district that grew up around the palace. As Robert Louis Stevenson remarked in 1870, the palace has been left aside in the growth of Edinburgh. It stands grey and silent in a workman's quarter, among breweries and gasworks. I hope that you enjoyed your visit to Dynamic Earth. Can I remind you, for your own safety, to remain seated and not to move around whilst the bus is in motion. We are approximately 10 minutes from our main terminus, so sit back and relax.
You have your phone?
Você mudou para português?
No.
As we leave this almost amphitheater-like entrance to dynamic Earth, the large modern building of the Scottish Parliament. This is the place that now creates and administers legislation for Scotland. The members of the Scottish Parliament are elected on a proportional representation system, unlike the Westminster government, which is elected by the more traditional first-past-the-post method. There are 129 members of the Scottish Parliament who are known as MSPs. The leader of the Scottish government is known as the First Minister.
I got one earlier. Yeah. Thank you.
Os aspones da vida.
Estranho, né? Mudou para português sem a
É
gente?
porque a bolsa tocou aí.
Não,
Sim, senhor.
eu não toquei no seu.
Meu, mine is in English.
This just looks so different than the first time.
A sua bolsa tocou aí e mudou.
Vamos ver que língua que é.
When we enter the park, above us
Voltou
tower
em
the
inglês.
Salisbury
Voltou em
Crags.
inglês.
Crag is a Scottish or North English word meaning a cliff face. One explanation for the origin of the name is that in the early Brythonic language of the region, the words for willow brae are very similar to Salisbury. These rocks were illegally quarried and do not naturally occur in this formation. The quarried rock was used to make pavements in them. Along the base of the cliff runs Radical Road, so called as it was constructed by a group of West Coast weavers who were unemployed at the time and held radical views.
It's quite a place. There's a
Leaving the park, the Palace Garden on the right is where the monarch and the duly appointed Lord High Commissioner to the General Assembly of the Church of Scotland hold their own separate annual garden parties for the Scottish people. Guests receive an exclusive blend of Twining's tea and very, very small cucumber sandwiches, as well as strawberry tarts, which are a legend on their own. The Palace of Holyrood House is mostly associated with the short and tragic life of the thrice-married Mary, Queen of Scots. She was the daughter of King James V, who, following a defeat for the Scots at the Battle of Solway Moss, died from his wounds at Falkland Palace. Mary was just 6 days old. Surrounded by uncertainty and possible danger, her mother, Mary Guise-Lorraine, who was regent for her infant child, shipped Mary to the French court, where she married the Dauphin in 1558.
So that's the gate, right?
The large hill in the middle of Holyrood Park is called Arthur's Seat. It stands 823 feet high and is a blow or vent hole for the enormous volcanic system that centred on Edinburgh Castle Rock. When this was in active mode, it would have been 2 to 3 times the height you see now. Within the park, you can also visit the ruins of St Anthony's Chapel, a 15th century medieval chapel, Salisbury Crags, a series of 150-foot cliff faces dominating Edinburgh's skyline, as well as Duddingston Loch, which is a freshwater loch rich in birdlife. From the top of Arthur's Seat, you can see from Ben Lomond in the Trossachs to May Island in the Firth of Forth, from Loch Nagar in the faraway Grampian Mountains to the Lammermuirs, the hills nestling at the entrance to the Scottish border country. This spectacular view is an exceeding reward for the great effort of climbing up there. A pagan legend tells us that if you are a young lady, you should climb the hill before sunrise on the 1st of May. As the first rays of sunlight illuminate the top of Arthur's Seat, you gather the early morning dew from the grass and then wash your face in that dew. This is said to ensure eternal beauty and is still a tradition to this day.
Eu nunca tinha visto dessas bolinhas brancas.
Came here, then we went there.
Yeah. Ó, a gente mora ali, ó. Aí pra baixo, à direita.
It is uncertain as to why the hill is called Arthur's Seat. It appears on early maps, where it is named as the Dolorous Mountain, which means the Sad Mountain. The most likely explanation is that it is named after King Arthur of Round Table fame. From a certain angle, the hill resembles the head of a crouching lion, which was the symbol of the aforementioned King Arthur.
Levava 12 anos para chegar, nem na metade do caminho hoje levava. 2 horas, levava 12 horas.
Named his son
Isso.
In 1508, he arranged a jousting tournament here at Arthur's Seat.
Robert Burns é poeta.
High above us stands Carlton Hill, from which you have wonderful views across the city. On the summit, there are impressive monuments for you to photograph and enjoy. Should you decide to visit Carlton Hill, you will find the City Observatory, built for the Astronomical Institution, Observatory House, designed by James Craig, the Nelson Monument, designed to resemble a telescope, and the National Monument, intended to be a copy of the Parthenon in Athens. Unfortunately, the money ran out before the National Monument could be finished, leaving just a row of columns. Because of this, it is known locally as Edinburgh's disgrace.
Torcer a perna.
On Carlton Hill, the Nelson Monument was erected only 4 years after Admiral Horatio Lord Nelson beat the combined French and Spanish fleets under the command of Grand Admiral Jean-Baptiste de Villeneuve at Cape Trafalgar. Both men lost their lives in the engagement. Every year, on Trafalgar Day, 21st of October, the rigging is dressed with the 32 flag message which reads, "England expects that every man will do his duty." Nelson actually wanted the message to read, "England confides that every man will do his duty."
Here, right here. What is it?
There's a sign.
这个路口，
Waverly down right.
这个路口我行，然后这边右走，然后红灯，然后变绿灯之后，这个车没走，我就跑过去了，然后发现是个 yellow bulb。后来看 yellow bulb 是，如果你右转的时候那条路有空，只是因为你为了避让直行车，你可以停在 yellow bulb。
That's one of the places where we
outro ponto ali.
Não, é essa mesma. Só nós temos que pegar o azul, que acho que não é.
We're halfway, Celia.
Vamos guardar, guarda o seu. Se bem que eu acho que não é multi.